now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today. A few minutes after the jury came back with a verdict of guilty in the case of Derek Chauvin for murdering George Floyd, we had another police shooting where a white police officer shot a black teenage girl. And in this case, Makia Bryant, a 16-year-old girl, was shot and killed outside of her foster home by a white police officer. Now, this white police officer was responding to a call as related to a brawl which was taking place outside of a foster home. And as this officer came on the scene, as shown in a video, he saw your 16-year-old Makia Bryant taking out a kitchen knife and then lunging at one of the teenage girls she was fighting with. And as this officer observed this Makia Bryant looking to stab this other teenage girl, he wound up taking out his service weapon and shooting Makia Bryant 4 times and killing her. Now, most people in the black community, they are outraged about this police shooting by this white police officer of this black teenage girl. And as they are caught up in their emotions about this case, they are trying to make it all about race, and they want to go out here and march and protest over the shooting of Makia Bryant, blaming the police officer for using excessive force. But when I take a critical examination of that video of that police officer firing and shooting to kill your Makia Bryant, I cannot blame this police officer for this shooting. No, the people who I blame for the death of Makia Bryant is not the Columbus Police Department. No, I blame the Black Matriarchy for the death of Makia Bryant. And I blame the Black Matriarchy for the death of Makia Bryant because it was the black women in the community who failed Makia Bryant. And the first black woman to fail Makia Bryant was Makia Bryant's mother. Now, Makia Bryant's mother is coming out talking about how much of a good girl Makia Bryant was, but clearly Makia Bryant learned dysfunction from her. And your Makia Bryant's mother was the one who created the situation that led to Makia Bryant being in that foster home. And while Makia Bryant dreamed of reconciling and going back to her mother, it was her mother who created that toxic situation that led to her and her sister being forced to leave their home and go into the foster system. So the first woman to fail Makia Bryant was her mother, and she wasn't the only black woman in her family to fail her, because according to reports, Makia Bryant had an aunt, and if that aunt had taken that girl on, maybe possibly this girl would still be alive today. So the family structure right there failed Makia Bryant, but the mainstream media, they want you to believe, oh, it was the white police officer who did all the wrong. No, it was the black females who created the situation which led to this girl's life being put in jeopardy, because it was these black women who were following the feminist idea of being strong and independent. They went out here and left this girl emotionally vulnerable and put her in harm's way by creating a toxic situation which led to her and her sister winding up in the foster system. Now, this matriarchy also failed the other girls who were in this foster home, and the main reason why these girls were fighting was because the room they were in was allegedly a mess. And because these girls were in this messy room, they started to have an argument, they started to have a fight, and things got so heated between these girls that they practically wound up having a brawl. And that whole brawl they were in was the result of the culture your Ma'Khia Bryant had learned on social media. Now, according to reports, your Ma'Khia Bryant loved to make TikTok videos, but I believe she had been watching a lot of YouTube videos and videos on World Star Hip Hop growing up, because that's possibly the place where she learned this whole culture of fighting the way that she did. Because in your social media, we have seen for over a decade young black girls and black women fighting and brawling in the street, where they are pulling hair, where they are having pinwheel flail fights, and they're doing this all in fast food restaurants, hair salons, nail salons, bodegas. They have been fighting in these videos for years. And your 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant, this is the culture she grew up in. This is the culture she was taught. And this is the culture she imbibed over the years. And as she was in this culture, growing up in this matriarchy, learning this way of life, this is how she learned how to conflict resolve, by having these Pier 6 style brawls. And it possibly was the way she learned how to do things, because if she wound up in the foster system, that's what was going on here. And that's probably why she got into this Pier 6 brawl outside of this foster home. And things got so chaotic that a police officer had to be called. Unfortunately, in this case, there was a major case of consequences for their actions. And what happened was, because this situation had gotten so out of control, people at the foster home had to call the police. And they called the police because they could not contain or deal with these young girls who had practically gotten completely out of control. And that police officer who came on the scene, he did not know what was going on as related to Ma'Khia Bryant. He did not see Ma'Khia Bryant as the victim that the mainstream media was trying to portray her as. No, he saw an individual who was looking to do harm to two other individuals, and he saw an individual who was looking to go out here and take the life of another individual. So that's why he drew his service weapon and wound up shooting and killing Ma'Khia Bryant. But you'll have people in the black community, they'll sit there and they'll want to point the finger at the white cop and make him the bad guy, when the actual bad guys were the black matriarchy and the members of the black matriarchy who failed Ma'Khia Bryant. Because if it wasn't for the single mom being dysfunctional and teaching a dysfunctional culture to her daughters, Ma'Khia Bryant wouldn't be in the foster system, and she would be alive today, because it was the culture that she learned inside of that single mother household that led to her winding up in an extremely dysfunctional situation. And it was that single mother household that taught her this whole culture of fighting and brawling, and also taught her the whole culture of not being able to work with others. Because when you are in a place like a foster home, people expect you to have discipline and structure, and that was shown that they didn't have discipline and structure, because part of the rules of being in a foster home is you have to keep your space clean and your space straight. So if they're fighting over the fact that the room is messy, again, it shows that this girl was never really taught a good culture that would show her how to be a good daughter and a responsible daughter. And it seems like everybody wants to avoid holding this black matriarchy accountable for this Ma'Khia Bryant losing her life. Everybody wants to point at the white cop and talk about let's punish the white cop. But no, why don't we try to hold this black matriarchy accountable? This black matriarchy, the women in this matriarchy, they were the ones who created this situation. They were the ones who wound up creating this culture of dysfunction, and they were the ones who wound up creating the model for the behavior that these girls have been following. I mean, when I look at the timeline and I think about all the YouTube videos and World Star Hip Hop videos of black women brawling, this is the ultimate climax of it, and it shows us that your law enforcement isn't going to go along like these beta black males who have been taught to submit to the black woman and put up with her aggression. No, these police officers, when they run into an aggressive black woman like this, they are going to pull their weapon and they are going to shoot first and ask questions later, because a lot of people in the black community, they were expecting the officers to just sit there and try to figure things out and try to ask, oh, what happened? But when they see somebody carrying a weapon to harm another person, they are trained to take out their firearm and shoot center mass. They're not thinking about the age of the individual. They're thinking about the health and safety of the other individuals out here. And they're not thinking about, oh, let me try to figure out if this is a child or not. They see somebody carrying a weapon to do harm to somebody else. They're not worried about the details. They're just worried about neutralizing the threat. And this is something that many black people, they're not really thinking about critically, because they're approaching this case from the emotional point, and they're thinking about it all about race and thinking, oh, he could have shot in her in the arm, he could have shot. No, but the officer's job is to neutralize the threat. And that's flying again over the heads of many black people who are caught up in emotion over this case, thinking, oh, she was 16, but that 16-year-old would not be in that foster home had it not been for those black women failing her in her family. Those strong, independent black women who did not need a man, they failed this black girl, and because they failed her, this is why this young woman is dead today. And she's dead because they did not, again, teach her, they did not protect her, they did not support her, and they left her to the state. And sadly, because she wound up in the hands of the state in a foster home, she was in this place where where they were expecting her to have structure. And then when she was with these other girls who never learned structure, they went and had a Pier 6 brawl over a messy bedroom. And that's something that most people, again, when they have good parents, they're not going to have a messy bedroom, because, again, when you have a father in charge, he's going to insist that that daughter keep her room clean, and he's going to insist that she follows the rules. Now, a lot of people, again, they want to sit here and talk about how these cops were the bad guy, but again, I don't see it where the cops are the bad guy in this situation. I see it where these matriarchy is the bad guy, and everybody wants to deflect to keep from holding the black matriarchy accountable for what they did, and holding that black matriarchy responsible for the failures they've participated in as related to raising a generation of girls and teaching these girls how to handle and carry and conduct themselves. Because this is just the second shooting of a black female as related to white police officers. A couple of weeks ago, we had another black woman who was shot and killed by police because she decided to get defiant, and she decided to pull a weapon on that officer after he found drugs in her vehicle. And in that incident, that black woman wound up dead, just like Nakia Bryant wound up dead. And this, again, is a start of, looks like a troubling trend. And if these black females don't understand that you cannot get aggressive like this in the presence of police, sadly, we may see more tragic incidents like this, because when it comes down to these law enforcement officers, they are not thinking about whether you're a woman or whether they're just seeing you as a threat. And this is something many black women and black girls aren't really thinking about, because they think that because they're women, they're gonna be able to get a pass, but you're not going to get a pass from these police officers out here if you call yourself acting masculine and acting aggressive towards these police officers. If you act aggressive and masculine towards these police officers, they are going to use deadly force, especially if you lunge at these officers with a weapon. That's something many people aren't really thinking about as related to this Makia Bryant situation. And many of the people in this case, they're thinking, oh, it's just a case of, oh, this teenage girl who will never get a chance to be with her biological mother. But sadly, she's not. She's in that case because her parents weren't taking care of business. And that's the thing that people really don't want to think about in this whole case, is this tragically, again, happened over a messy bedroom. But the real mess is this black matriarchy who completely failed this girl. And sadly, most people in the black community, they want to march and protest against the white cop, but they really don't want to go out here and hold this black matriarchy of black female single mothers accountable for the dysfunctional way they have raised an entire generation of girls. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my books featuring positive portrayals of black women, like the ISIS series, the Thetas, the E-Steam series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy and A Recipe for Success, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find some of them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy. It's a sister act as the goddess next door and the devilish diva team up in this action-packed Isis series adventure. Get Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy in paperback and e-readers everywhere.